Rumor had it I was a husband killer, yet the bedridden fourth prince was dead set on marrying me, saying life was nothing but agony and begging me to do him a favor. Later, I held our 2 children in my arms, utterly confused. Wait, why are you still here? Him. Could the imperial consort please try a little harder? 1. On the very first day I returned to the capital, I killed my first fiancé, the eldest son of the Minister of Rights, after drinking with courtesans at the Spring Breeze Tower. Fell from the upper floor and died. I'd barely even met the man before this, but the title of husband killer was now firmly mine. According to everyone in the Prime Minister's mansion, the young lady hasn't been back to the capital in 10 years, and Master Li was perfectly fine. How come he dies the moment she returns? Her fate's just cursed, that's all. What young lady? If it weren't for our mistress taking pity on her, she'd probably waste away alone in that bitter cold place for the rest of her life. Sigh. I told them I was perfectly happy staying alone in my hometown. Why did my useless father, so easily swayed, have to drag me back, all to show off the generosity of his second wife? He really went to great lengths. Truth be told, my status in the Prime Minister's mansion was rather awkward, for my mother was my father's first wife. They'd both been poor once, a well-matched pair. But then my father topped the imperial examinations and rose through the ranks in the blink of an eye. Amidst the capital's princesses and ministers' wives, my mother stood out like a sore thumb. Before long, my mother passed away, and I was sent back to my hometown ostensibly to recover from an illness, but in truth, to make room for someone else. I didn't care, though. Life in my hometown was free and easy, far happier than anything the capital could offer, so I was miserable after returning. My father's current wife came from an aristocratic family. Aside from giving birth to a daughter and no other children, she was faultless. She'd even thoughtfully helped my father take several concubines. It was just that, all these years, not a single child had been born to them. Thus, my father finally remembered I existed. A daughter, if nothing else, could be used for a political marriage, but no one expected the fiancé to die before the wedding date was even set. Later, my father betrothed me to the young master of the Southern Pacification General's mansion, and he, too, fell off a cliff and died while hunting with friends. My reputation as a husband killer resounded throughout the capital, so I decided to go to the mountains to pray to the Buddha and rid myself of this bad luck. And it worked, amazingly enough. The next day, the emperor issued an imperial edict, betrothing me to the fourth prince, me. Everyone in the capital knew the fourth prince had been frail since birth. Folk said he wouldn't live past his 20th birthday. That was why, despite having an exquisitely handsome face, no one had dared to marry him all these years. Young lady, what do we do? The master and mistress actually agreed. Yulan, the maid who'd grown up with me, paced around in a panic. If you marry him and end up a widow, whatever will we do? I comforted her. The imperial edict is unbreakable. Besides, a living widow and a dead widow are pretty much the same. Look on the bright side, maybe he'll die before I even marry him. Jiu Jifang, my half-sister, smiled and congratulated me. The fourth prince is a man of celestial grace, gentle as jade. He'll surely treat you wonderfully in the future. I'm truly envious. Me, if you're that envious, I can save you a spot as his second wife. Her face froze instantly, and she fell silent. But the fourth prince must have had some true dragon luck in him, for he stubbornly clung to life until our wedding day. On our wedding night, I stared at the man before me, black hair, dark eyes, exquisitely handsome yet sickly frail, and fell into thought. Should we just go to bed directly? Before I could lie down, however, the man grabbed my wrist first. I've long heard of Miss Gu's reputation. I beg you, grant me a quick death. Me. I hesitated for a long while. Your Highness. This concubine has no objection, but you're in such poor health. Perhaps tonight, we should forget it. It's more important to take care of your body. Yunjing fell silent for a moment, seemingly gritting his teeth. I'm talking about the husband-killer thing. This illness is tormenting me. I beg you, do me this favor. 2. I was in a tough spot. I'd slaughtered pigs and chickens plenty of times back in my hometown, but I'd never actually killed a person. Besides, if my husband died in my bed on our wedding night, it would be so inconvenient for me to remarry later. My eyes brimming with tears, I held Yunjing's hands. Your Highness, what are you saying? Now that I've married you, I shall stay by your side for all eternity. A flicker of emotion crossed Yunjing's eyes, and then he slowly broke into a faint smile. The candlelight flickered. The man was breathtakingly handsome when he smiled. His face just pale to an extreme, like a delicate white flower that inspired pity. Miss Gu is gentle and virtuous, in the bloom of her youth. How could I make you waste your life on me? Me, who had no intention of dying with him. I said each word slowly. Your Highness, you have great fortune in your veins. You will surely recover. At the very least, hold on for a while longer. I'd finally escaped the Prime Minister's mansion, free from those gloomy stares, for once. I could enjoy a few carefree days. Though Yunjing was a sickly man, he was a royal sickly man. As long as he was alive, people would have to give him face, wouldn't they? Abiding by the principle of clinging to this thigh for as long as possible, I had to be the most dutiful princess consort ever. If I kept this man happy, he might even leave me a lot of silver in the future. At the thought of this, my eyes reddened, and I whispered, Your Highness, you are my only family now. Everyone in the capital knew about the mess in the Prime Minister's mansion. Saying this, anyone would think of the miserable life I'd led there, if not for selling my misery now. When Yunjing was stunned, after a long while, he stroked my hair and sighed softly. Since we are husband and wife, I shall protect you for all time. I tucked him into bed earnestly. Then, a single tear glistening in my eye, I pressed my lips together and smiled at him. Your Highness, you are so kind. Yunjing was the 4th prince, titled Prince Yi, and I thus became the rightful Princess Yi. Life in the prince's mansion was blissful. Every morning, I personally brewed medicine for Yunjing. In the afternoons, I accompanied him in reading. At night, I warmed his bed, of course, in the literal sense. A pure tool person through and through, his health was poor, and he was always sensitive to the cold. It was just early autumn, yet he already used a hand warmer. I, however, had grown up in the countryside, climbing trees, catching birds. I'd done it all. My body was as strong as an ox, a walking little stove, so I took it upon myself to warm his bed for him. He mostly read the book of songs or Buddhist scriptures, leaning quietly on a soft couch, white robes, black hair utterly ethereal, the kind of ethereal that made him look like he might ascend to immortality at any moment. Every time I saw this sight, my enthusiasm for reading medical books surged. I didn't expect him to make a full recovery, but the longer he lived, the longer I could enjoy this life of ease. But Yulan was still filled with anxiety. But this can't go on forever. If the young lady could have a child or two to rely on, you'd have nothing to worry about in the future. I put down the thick cloak I was sewing for Yunjing and stared at her silently. His Highness treats me so well, and I still make such unreasonable demands of him. Isn't that inappropriate? This was nothing short of tormenting Yunjing. Yulan looked like she was about to cry. This servant knows her mistake. I nodded, and before I could speak, a warm, familiar voice sounded behind me. You're right, it's no mistake at all. I shot to my feet and turned around. Why, Your Highness? Yunjing stood at the door, dressed in white, a smile on his lips. He asked softly, It's only natural for Meow Meow to want a child. How could that be an unreasonable demand? A chill ran down the back of my neck. 3. For a moment, I was confused. Well, why isn't it? I thought it, but I'd never dare say it out loud. Your Highness, I stepped forward and took his cold hand, my heart growing even colder. How long had he been standing there? Yulan is young and foolish. Please don't take it to heart. I brought his hand to my lips and blew on it. Why didn't you say something when you arrived? Autumn is here, and the wind's been strong these days. It wouldn't do for you to catch a cold. As I spoke, I winked at Yulan. Hurry and bring the fritillary and pear soup I stewed for His Highness. Yulan ran off in a flash. Yunjing coughed a few times, his face growing even paler. Cough, 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 meow meow. Rest assured, what you wish for, this prince, cough. This prince will do his utmost to, cough, cough, cough. Me, seriously, looking like this, doing his utmost seems rather hopeless, doesn't it? Of course, no matter what. The esteemed fourth prince was still a man, saying that would hurt his pride, so I'd never utter those words. I held his hands earnestly, my eyes sincere. Having a child with your highness would be the greatest blessing. But no matter what, in Meow Meow's heart, your highness is the most important person of all. TSK. Life is hard, so Meow Meow acts her part. Yunjing's long eyelashes fluttered, his dark pupils deep and calm like still water. After a long while, he slowly smiled. Meow Meow must keep her word. I nodded frantically. My esteemed husband, my thigh to cling to, my protector. Of course no one in this world is more important than you. Everyone in the prince's mansion knew how deeply the fourth prince and I loved each other. The news even spread back to the prime minister's mansion. Because on my father's birthday banquet, Yunjing accompanied me back in person. Though my father was the prime minister, Yunjing was a titled prince after all. By condescending to come with me, he'd given us immense face, my face. Throughout the entire banquet, Jiyu Zhifang's face was clouded with displeasure. It wasn't until her mother, Madame Jiang, casually mentioned her betrothal to the crown prince that she smiled again, triumph plain to see in her eyes. Yes, she'd just become betrothed to the crown prince, Yun Ming, as his secondary consort. She smiled sweetly. Sister and Prince Yi are as harmonious as a lute and a zither. It's enough to make anyone envious. I hope I can have such a marriage with the crown prince in the future. I put down my chopsticks and thought carefully, looking a little troubled. Then, what about Princess Qinyang? Princess Qinyang was the eldest daughter of the Prince of Yang, the only non-royal prince of the great Xia dynasty. Her status was as noble as a princess's, and she was also the crown prince's future primary consort. Jiyu Zhifang's face froze instantly, and she hastened to salvage the situation. No, it's not like that. I have absolutely no intention of competing with Princess Qinyang. I only wish to serve the crown prince wholeheartedly in the future, just as you do Prince Yi. Sister, though you've only known each other a short while, your bond is truly deep. Was she implying that I curried favor with Yunjing on purpose? That my affection for him was all an act? It was true. Of course, but it was rather rude of her to say it out loud in public. I set down my chopsticks, held my breath, and my cheeks flushed slightly. With a hint of shyness, I glanced at Yunjing beside me. Your Highness is very handsome. As everyone knew, Yunjing took after his mother, and was indeed the most good-looking among all the princes. As for Crown Prince Yunming, well, he looked just like the current emperor, rather stocky. I looked at her earnestly, but feelings can be nurtured. Given time, your bond will naturally grow deep too. Jiyu Zhifang's features twisted slightly. Yunjing beside me seemed to let out a soft chuckle, for rumors of Yunjing and I falling in love at first sight spread throughout the entire Great Xia, so much so that the emperor specially summoned me to join the autumn hunt. As Princess Yi, I was certainly entitled to go, but that was the problem. The man I married, with his frail little body, what did he have to do with an autumn hunt? Forget riding a horse and hunting. If he could stand in the bitter late autumn wind on the outskirts of the capital for half an hour, I feared I would be on my way to becoming a widow early. But Yulan had heard some gossip from somewhere, and looked at me with watery eyes. Miss, I heard His Royal Highness the Fourth Prince is only going this time for you. How so? Yulan counted on her fingers. His Royal Highness has been frail since he was in his mother's womb. So he has never participated in the autumn hunt. Only 3 years ago, the Crown Prince invited a famous doctor to tend to his Royal Highness's health, and he really improved a great deal. The Emperor was overjoyed, rewarded the Crown Prince, and even specially let his Royal Highness go to the autumn hunt. But his Royal Highness caught a cold there, lay abed for a month when he came back, and almost, Yulan lowered her voice, for this matter, the Emperor flew into a terrible rage. Saying the doctor the Crown Prince invited was a quack, he not only severely punished the Crown Prince, but also exiled that doctor. There seemed to be nothing wrong with this story, yet something about it felt off. In the end, it was still Yun Jing's own poor health, but who let him have a face almost identical to his mother's. Rumor had it that the former consort Rong was the most beautiful woman in the harem. Beloved by the Emperor all her days, though she came from a humble background, she had firmly established herself in the palace with just her face. Sadly, beautiful flowers fade early. She suffered a massive hemorrhage when giving birth to Yun Jing and passed away on the spot. Thinking about it this way, Yun Jing seemed a little more pitiful than me. At the very least, I still remembered what my mother looked like. But Yun Jing had never even laid eyes on his. Originally, the Emperor didn't plan to let his Royal Highness go this time either. But he said that you've been in the capital from the northern moors for so long and haven't had much chance to go out and see the bustle of the capital. This is a rare opportunity, and he wants to accompany you. Yulan covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with the look of someone who had just seen a perfect love match. Though his Royal Highness is in poor health, his treatment of you is truly impeccable. I hesitated for a moment. That may be true. But these people in the palace have such loose lips. Yun Jing hadn't even told me this himself, yet they all knew it better than I, his legitimate princess. Yolan's eyes widened. So you're not going? Of course I'm going. I straightened my back. His Highness's heart is true to me, and mine is the same for him. Woo-hoo, it's been so long since I've had roast rabbit. The rabbits in the imperial hunting ground must be plump. Right, I was right. The rabbits in the hunting ground were indeed plump. Perfect. The only downside was that I got lost. To be precise, Yun Jing and I got lost together. It was quite a ridiculous story. Originally, Yun Jing and I, one a real invalid and the other faking dignity, even if we went to the hunting ground, should have stayed in a warm tent playing cards and waiting for food. No, waiting for the Crown Prince and the others to return with a full haul. But perhaps the weather was too perfect. The sunlight filtering through the forest, dappled tree shadows, piles of fallen leaves, making people relax unconsciously. I wanted to pick some pine nuts, and Yun Jing readily agreed. I had planned to only stay on the edge, but as I picked and picked, I looked up and realized we were actually lost. Worse still, it started snowing. Does it ever snow this heavily in the capital? Hiding in a cave we had luckily found, I stared at the vast white expanse outside, a little dazed. I thought only the northern moors had such heavy snow. Yun Jing turned to look at me. Homesick, I nodded vigorously. I missed my great ice lake, my snow sculptures, my roast rabbit. Sorrow welled up in my heart unbidden. Yun Jing smiled faintly. Then if there's a chance in the future, this prince will accompany you back to, cough, cough, cough. A cold wind blew in, and he started coughing again, his pale lips even whiter, filled with anxiety. I hurried forward to pat his back and soothe his breathing, but as I patted, Yun Jing's head lolled to the side, and he fainted from exhaustion. I froze. Oh no, I really am a husband killer. The snow has sealed the mountain. What if Yun Jing freezes to death here? 5. After thinking for a long time, watching Yun Jing's face grow paler and paler, I gritted my teeth and simply stepped out of the cave. Then, I dug a branch out of the snow, made a slingshot by hand, and shot a rabbit dead on my way back. Inside the cave, a bonfire burned quietly, and the rabbit sizzled, dripping with oil. I held Yun Jing and moved closer to the bonfire. staring eagerly at the golden brown, fragrant roast rabbit meat. Maybe I should eat first. Who knew when Yunjing would wake up? With this thought, I reached out and tore off a rabbit leg directly. Yet before I could take a bite, Yunjing suddenly stirred and slowly opened his eyes. I immediately pounced on him. Your Highness, you're awake. Yunjing gave me a weak smile, then his gaze drifted down, fixing on the rabbit leg in my hand. His expression seemed a little dazed. Meow meow. Where did this come from? It would be rather inappropriate to say I shot it myself. After all, I was the gentle and dignified Princess Yi. My frail, helpless husband might not have a strong heart. It was better to be gentle. Yes, I shook my head and whispered, Meow meow doesn't know either. Just now, when your Highness fainted, I went out to pick up some branches to make a fire, but when I came back, I saw this rabbit lying unconscious at the cave entrance. Perhaps it fainted from hunger. Yunjing stared at the glistening, oily rabbit leg, and fell silent for a moment. It must be so. I held back my heartache and handed the meat over. Your Highness, eat a little to fill your stomach first. Someone will surely come looking for us soon. We had gotten lost in the afternoon. And now the sky outside was completely dark. Who knew when the guards would find us? I had to keep Yunjing alive first. Yunjing hesitated for a moment, and perhaps he was really hungry, for he took it anyway. I then turned my gaze to the other rabbit leg. It's okay, one for each person is pretty good. Yet before I could move, Yunjing suddenly said, It's hot. Let me do it. I was stunned, and then I saw him take out an exquisite and beautiful dagger, and patiently slice the meat into pieces. This dagger was inlaid with jewels all over. I had always thought it was just an ornament. After all, this was the autumn hunt, and even though Yunjing wasn't participating, hanging a dagger was a good way to keep up appearances. I never thought it would come in handy at a time like this. The bonfire light reflected on his exquisitely handsome face, making him look like an immortal banished from heaven. My mind wandered for a moment. Honestly, this man hit all my aesthetic points perfectly. Faced with such a face, my 3 parts of acting skills could play out 7 parts, perhaps addled by his beauty. When Yunjing handed over the sliced rabbit meat, I leaned forward and took a bite instinctively. Then I accidentally bit his finger. I froze. Yunjing froze too. When I came to my senses, my face burned bright red. Yunjing blinked gently, and suddenly smiled. Why, is it not tasty? Is there something wrong with this sentence? Is there? For once, I felt flustered. Your Highness should eat some too. Your body is sensitive to the cold. Eat more to warm up. I meant this sincerely, because Yunjing was unusually afraid of the cold. We had been sitting by the fire for so long, yet his hands were still cold, but his stomach had never been good. So he stopped after eating a little, leaning half against the stone wall and closing his eyes to rest. I could only finish the rest with tears in my eyes. Waste not, want not, waste not, want not. But I am a person with principles. Since I had eaten his food, I must return the favor. Yunjing seemed to have fallen asleep again. I touched his hand, and it was still cold. If he didn't see the sun tomorrow after this night, wouldn't I be in a bad way too? Thinking this, I raised my hand to unbutton his clothes. Yunjing seemed to sense something, and opened his eyes. The bonfire flickered, reflecting in the depths of his pitch-black eyes. Impossible to see clearly. Meow meow, he asked softly, as if not fully awake yet. I snuggled close to him, draped the thick cloak I had sewn for him earlier over his shoulders again, and wrapped my arms around his lean waist. This man looked delicate, yet he had abs. The thought flashed by in an instant, and I nuzzled his neck. I'm warm. Let me warm your Highness up. Yunjing said nothing, his breathing seeming to still for a moment, but his body felt a little warmer than before. I was delighted, and looked up at him, just in time to see the tips of his ears turn pink. It works. The man's complexion has improved a lot. I held him even tighter. striving to pass all the heat from my body to his through our thin inner robes. Do you feel better? Yunjing closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice was a little hoarse. 6. I slept straight through until dawn. When I woke up in the morning, I found the thick cloak draped over me, and Yunjing standing at the cave entrance, looking out. He stood with his hands behind his back, the early morning sunlight falling on him, making him seem even colder and clearer than the white snow outside. Your Highness, I touched my clothes, which had been fastened at some point, and hugged the cloak as I walked over, only to see faint dark circles under Yunjing's eyes. Did you not sleep well? I thought I'd been a pretty competent little heater. Yunjing curved his lips slightly. It's nothing. He pointed outside. It seems someone's come looking for us. I never expected it to be Princess Qinyang. Prince Yang was skilled in horseback riding and archery, and as his eldest daughter, Princess Qinyang was famously excellent in these two. Prince Yi, Princess Yi. Princess Qinyang clearly let out a sigh of relief at seeing both of us alive. We finally found you. I curtsied to thank her, then said with a worried frown, His Highness must have caught a cold. We need to get him to a royal physician at once. Princess Qinyang waved her hand. The royal physicians are all tied up right now, but the doctor from my manor came with us. Let him take a look at Prince Yi. Anyone Princess Qinyang employed was surely an excellent physician. But, what did she mean the royal physicians were all tied up? I couldn't help but ask. And Princess Qinyang waved a hand dismissively. Ah, it's nothing. The crown prince was assassinated. Me, if I remembered correctly, that's your future husband, isn't he? Princess Qinyang seemingly realized her tone was far too casual, and added, He's not dead, just took 2 sword strikes to the chest. Me. Yunjing's brows furrowed slightly. What happened? Word is it was the third prince's doing, Princess Qinyang said, her face twisting into a look of disdain. The first strike was a sneak attack, so it's understandable he couldn't dodge it, but how did he let himself get stabbed a second time? The servants and guards behind her all hung their heads, pretending not to hear. Me. Though the crown prince was stocky, he was far better at reading and mediocre at martial arts. No wonder Princess Qinyang reacted this way. Add to that her noble status, even the current emperor showed her father a modicum of respect, and she had even fewer inhibitions. She'd probably say the same thing even if the crown prince was right here. I walked forward with Yunjing, and the snow under my feet suddenly caved in, sending me stumbling. Luckily, Yunjing wrapped an arm around my waist just in time. Meow meow, are you all right? Beneath the sunlight, his long eyelashes drooped slightly, and a cold wind blew, making his lips look even paler. My face flushed red, not from shyness, but from embarrassment. Me, the unrivaled tyrant of the countryside, reduced to being supported by an invalid, humiliating, disgraceful. I quickly clung to his arm. I'm fine, perfectly fine. Princess Qinyang's gossipy eyes darted between the two of us, and a strange smile suddenly spread across her face. It seems the princess Yi had quite a hard time taking care of Prince Yi last night. Talk if you want. Why are you smiling? Yunjing ignored her words, only lifting a hand to feel my forehead, his brows furrowing slightly. You have a fever. He then looked at Princess Qinyang. Please tend to Meow Meow first. Princess Qinyang clicked her tongue, and with a look of regret, waved at the doctor behind her. When we got back, I found out a lot had happened that night. The third prince had sent men to assassinate the crown prince, leaving him severely wounded. The emperor flew into a rage and threw the third prince into the imperial prison. Overnight, the court was thrown into an uproar. And because Yunjing and I had been stranded in the mountains all day, we'd missed it all perfectly. But Yunjing's condition was no better. The snow-blocked mountain had worsened his illness, and he took to his bed for a full half-month. I sat in the courtyard and began to worry. Yulan, do you think since Jiyu Zhifang and the crown prince's wedding has been postponed, my widowhood might come early? Yulan looked at me with despair in her eyes. Me, you think it's possible too, don't you? A familiar voice sounded from behind me, interspersed with a few coughs. This prince promised to have a child with Meow Meow. I haven't kept that promise yet, so I should, I should not be leaving anytime soon. 7. Some men are dead, yet they live on. Some women are alive, yet they might as well be dead. I think my eyes were even more despairing than Yolan's at this moment. Getting caught speaking ill of someone behind their back once was bad enough, now it was the second time. I quickly composed myself, turned around, and threw myself into Yunjing's arms. Your Highness, you're finally awake. Yunjing stumbled a little from the impact, but steadied himself in the end, and patted my head with a half-amused, half-sighing look. Why are you crying? I clung tightly to his lapels. Looking miserable, Meow Meow doesn't want to eat or sleep alone. Will your Highness stay with Meow Meow forever? From the corner of my eye, I saw Yulan frantically winking at me. Miss. We're out in the open, everyone's listening. But I had no time for shyness now. If I didn't show some deep affection now, was there any hope left? Yunjing's hand paused for a moment, then he let out a soft laugh. All right, truly, a man on his deathbed speaks nothing but kind words. I found Yunjing more and more pleasing to the eye. This man might have a weak body, but he was truly a good person. Yunjing turned his head and coughed a few more times before asking gently, by the way, I heard Princess Qinyang sent you an invitation, asking you to her manor to admire the flowers. I shook my head. Your Highness is unwell. I have no heart for such things. Yunjing smiled. I'm fine. It's rare for you to have a like-minded friend in the capital. Or shall I accompany you? Though he'd woken up, I couldn't let him go through the trouble of traveling back and forth. What if he fell ill again? So I went alone in the end. Truth be told, what flowers were there to admire in the early winter? Princess Qinyang just wanted someone to come over and chat. I heard Jiu Zhifeng had been running to the Crown Prince's manor frequently these days, putting on the air of a gentle and virtuous secondary Crown Princess. As for Princess Qinyang, she either rode horses and played pitchpot, or admired flowers and drank wine. The contrast inevitably made Princess Qinyang seem overly arrogant, but she had a powerful father, so what did it matter? Even if the Crown Prince was deeply dissatisfied, he didn't dare to say a single word of criticism to her openly. He could only express his favor by bestowing gifts on Jiu Zhifeng, trying to gain the upper hand. The trinkets he gives aren't even worth my notice. Only those country bumpkins who've never seen the world treat them like treasures and show them off all day. Princess Qinyang grabbed a handful of melon seeds, her face full of disdain. I nodded earnestly. It was the truth, beloved as she was. Princess Qinyang was far more wealthy than the Crown Prince. Hey, by the way, help me pick one. Which one do you think is the best? Princess Qinyang said, and had a stack of scrolls brought over. The one who brought them was a slender young man with cold eyes and a straight back. I opened them curiously, then my mood grew extremely complicated. So when you said admiring flowers, you meant admiring men. I'd long heard that Princess Qinyang kept a troop of pretty boys in her manor, but this bold display of picking one out in the open was a first for me. Seeing that I'd been silent this whole time, Princess Qinyang nudged me with her elbow. Ever since I found out you chose to marry the fourth prince, I knew you had good taste. Hurry and help me pick. Me. Is this a compliment or an insult? I looked for a moment, then pulled out one scroll. This one. Princess Qinyang glanced at it. Ji Yang, nice choice. He's the top new selection from the Autumn Breeze Pavilion. I spent a pretty penny on him. I lowered my voice. Actually, I think none of these compare to the one who brought the scrolls. Princess Qinyang didn't even lift her head, snorting lightly. How could he compare to these men? Just a little beggar from a fallen noble family. I instantly knew his identity, the only son of the former Minister of War, Xiao Qi. A few years prior, the Minister of War had been implicated in a major case. and his entire family was arrested and their property confiscated. It was Princess Qinyang who stepped in and saved Xiao Qi. Sadly, the once talented and elegant young master had been reduced to a lowly commoner overnight. Xiao Qi seemed to have heard her words, but his expression didn't change in the slightest. He stared stubbornly at the ground, motionless. Princess Qinyang put the scroll away, then looked at the young man. "Tell Ji Yang I'll go see him tonight." Xiao Qi pressed his lips together, his voice still cold. "Yes, Your Highness." After Xiao Qi left, I said, "If Your Highness likes him, why treat him this way?" Princess Qinyang shot me a look. "Don't talk nonsense. I'm betrothed to the Crown Prince, after all." "Me? Why didn't you say that when you were picking out pretty boys just now, after leaving the princess's manor? I didn't expect to run into Jiu Zhifang on the street." She sized me up from head to toe, touched the valuable red coral hairpin on her head, and smiled triumphantly. "What's wrong? Is the fourth prince still unwell? He didn't even accompany you out," I sighed. "The third prince hasn't even had his 7th day of mourning yet. Isn't it inappropriate for you to wear that hairpin?" Jiu Zhifang's expression froze instantly. 8. Speaking of the third prince's suicide in prison, it was quite a sad affair. During the autumn hunt, his plot to assassinate the crown prince was exposed. The emperor flew into a rage and had him thrown into the imperial prison on the spot, but the case had dragged on ever since. Word was the third prince had gone on a hunger strike to protest, claiming he was framed and refusing to confess no matter what. The emperor, perhaps still clinging to the father-son bond, saw that the crown prince's injuries were gradually healing and the third prince's attitude was so unyielding, and decided to order another investigation. But just as the case files were delivered to the Dali Temple's desk, the third prince bashed his head against the prison wall and died. The jailer in charge had been drinking that night and failed to notice. By the time he realized something was wrong, the third prince had already been cold for quite a while. There were far too many coincidences in this matter. Many said the third prince had felt guilty when he saw the emperor was truly going to reinvestigate, and thus took his own life. A few others, however, cast suspicious glances at the crown prince. These few others seemingly included the current emperor himself. It was no wonder the emperor was suspicious. He only had 4 sons left now. The second prince had died young. The fourth prince Yunjing was an invalid said not to live past 20, and the youngest fifth prince was only 3 years old this year, still tottering when he walked. Thus, the only ones with a real chance at the throne were the crown prince and the third prince. Now that the third prince had died such a suspicious death, it was only natural for everyone to think the worst. Everyone except Jiu Zhifang, that is, this simple-minded young lady from a noble family, whose only thought was that no one could now compete with the crown prince, and her position as consort was secure for good. Add to that Princess Qinyang's growing disrespect for the crown prince, with feasting and revelry every night at her manor. Their betrothal might not even last. In that case, it wasn't impossible for Jiu Zhifang to dream of becoming empress one day. She never stopped to think that all of this was predicated on the crown prince actually having the ability to sit on that throne. Jiu Zhifang's expression shifted, and she stepped forward, lowering her voice. "Sister, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't talk nonsense." The third prince disregarded filial piety and brotherly love to assassinate his elder brother. His heart was already worthy of death. Now he's committed suicide out of guilt. What more is there to say? She let out a cold laugh, triumph shining in her eyes. "You might not know this, sister, but the emperor specially sent the crown prince to handle the snow disaster in Fengju this time. Didn't he? The heavy snow during the autumn hunt had not been an accident. After that, several more blizzards hit the north, with Fengju suffering the worst. Tens of thousands of common people were displaced, homeless and hungry. Recently, many refugees from Fengju had fled to the capital, their clothes tattered and their bodies gaunt and bony. At a time like this, The emperor sending the crown prince to relieve the disaster could be considered an important task entrusted to him, in a way, but whether it was the emperor's own initiative, or he had no other sons to choose from and was forced to do so, was anyone's guess. He certainly couldn't send Yunjing, after all, a single gust of the 12th lunar month's cold wind, and what if the emperor lost another son? No wonder Jiu Zhifang was so arrogant, her face written all over with joy. I nodded. It's truly a hard job, freezing cold outside. How could it compare to the comfort of warming oneself by the fire indoors? Jiu Zhifang felt like she'd punched a pile of cotton, her face turning red with stifled anger. In the end, she only shot me a contemptuous look. You'd better go back and take care of the fourth prince early, sister. After all, with his health, the time you have together is one day less with each passing day. You must cherish it. I looked at her with sympathy. You're right, unlike you, the crown prince and princess Qinyang are both in good health. The days you'll spend waiting on them in the future are indeed going to be very long. Jiu Zhifang's face turned white with rage, and she raised her hand to slap me. Her slap never landed, for a distant, calm voice rang out. What is Miss Jiu II trying to do? Jiu Zhifang jumped in shock and turned around. A carriage had arrived unannounced, its curtain drawn aside to reveal half a face as cold and elegant as jade. Yunjing, 9, his dark eyes looked over quietly, as if it were just a plain question, yet Jiu Zhifang shivered. Why, Your Highness the Fourth? I was also quite surprised, and scurried over in small steps. Your Highness, why are you here? Yunjing's gaze fell on my face. I grew tired of being alone at home, so I thought I'd come pick you up. As he spoke, he looked at Jiu Zhifang again, the corners of his lips curving slightly, yet there was no warmth in his eyes. If this prince remembers correctly, Miao Miao is your elder sister. Besides, Miss Jiu II hasn't married into the crown prince's manor yet, has she? Such behavior seems inappropriate. In other words, she had no right to raise her hand to me. Jiu Zhifang was flustered beyond measure. No matter how arrogant she was, Yunjing's status was far above hers. Moreover, she had always maintained an image of gentleness and generosity. To be caught in such a moment by Yunjing, how could she not be nervous and flustered? Why, Your Highness, I didn't. A gust of wind blew, and I ignored Jiu Zhifang, hurrying onto the carriage. Your Highness, let's go back early. Yunjing looked at me, his thin lips pressed together, his voice cold. Jiu Miao Miao, though my body is weak, I can still protect my wife. Did this man seem angry? Ah, right. Jiu Zhifang daring to lay a hand on me was nothing short of slapping him in the face. I let the carriage curtain fall in one swift motion, then went to hold his hand, coaxing him patiently. You know your body is weak, don't you? A single gust of wind and you'll catch a cold again. It's not worth it for someone like her. If he ends up with a headache and fever later, I'm the one who has to warm his bed again, aren't I? Yunjing froze, silent for a moment, then lowered his eyelids, hiding the look in his eyes. Brother Huang is capable, so she naturally has plenty of confidence. If my body were better, Miao Miao would not have to suffer such grievances. I said casually, she thinks the crown prince is good, but I think Your Highness is better. The snow disaster is so severe this year. Disaster relief is such a troublesome matter. How can it compare to us living in peace at home? I never thought my words would be so prophetic. A month later, news broke that Jiang Ming, the governor of northern Zhili in charge of disaster relief, had embezzled 300,000 taels of silver in disaster relief funds. Jiang Ming was Madame Jiang's own elder brother, my useless father's brother-in-law. More importantly, he was the crown prince's right-hand man. That was why Jiu Zhifang had been able to marry the crown prince, standing out among the noble ladies of the capital to become his secondary consort. Now, of course, those noble ladies were probably secretly thanking their lucky stars for escaping this trouble, having committed such a serious crime. Even if his family was not confiscated and he was not beheaded, the Jiang family was doomed to decline from now on. For the crown prince, it was an even heavier loss. Yulan cut 2 plum blossom branches and brought them in, chatting gossip as she arranged the flowers. I heard the crown prince flew into a terrible rage. He even said he wanted to call off the engagement. The second miss smashed things at the mansion and hasn't come out for days. TSK, of course she'd be crying. Everyone in the capital knew that even though she and the crown prince were not yet married, they were extremely close. Fortunately, Princess Qinyang had taken in more and more pretty boys at her manor recently, each one more handsome than the last, barely winning her back some face. Otherwise, how embarrassing would that be? But unexpectedly, the crown prince did not call off the engagement with Jiyu Zhifang. Instead, at the court meeting a few days later, he knelt down in the hall and begged for mercy for Jiang Ming. Brother Huang is kind-hearted. Jiang Ming has followed him for a long time, and he is also the maternal uncle of his future secondary consort. How could he bear to watch him be beheaded? Yunjing set down a chess piece and sighed softly. I stared suspiciously at the chessboard. How did the black pieces form a line of 4 again? Had this man really not cheated while I was gone to get snacks? Yunjing seemed to read my thoughts, paused, and explained calmly, "Meow meow. There are only 13 chess pieces here. If I had taken any, wouldn't you notice?" "Oh, does that mean he knew about all the pieces I stole earlier?" I coughed guiltily. "Your Highness is truly amazing. I hope our children will be half as intelligent as Your Highness in the future." Yunjing's movements faltered, and a faint smile seemed to flit across his thin lips. It would be better if they were like Meow Meow. 10. When Yulan heard this conversation, she began excitedly guessing if we would have a son or a daughter in the future. I looked at the pink baby clothes she had prepared by her hand and said hesitantly, "Is there a possibility that I can't have children?" Yolan's eyes widened in shock. "What?" I waved my hand. "Don't look so shocked, I'm just saying it casually. After all, Yunjing and I, well, hadn't, cough cough, but of course, I couldn't say that out loud." Yulan didn't know the inside story and said sadly, "Even if someone can't have children, it should be His Highness, not you." I looked at her with approval. Truly my girl, she was on my side no matter what. But everyone else thought differently. I had been married to Yunjing for several months, and my belly had not moved at all. The palace had already started hinting explicitly and implicitly that Yunjing should take a concubine. I was confused. "Really, Empress, your only son has made his father so angry, and you still have the heart to think about such things." When I returned to the manor, I found out why the Empress was suddenly in such a good mood and even had time for such trivial matters. A large number of court officials, led by my father, had spoken up for the Crown Prince. Earlier, the Crown Prince had begged for mercy for Jiang Ming, angering the Emperor so much that he ordered him to reflect on his mistakes at the Crown Prince's manor for a month. Before the month was even up, the ministers submitted a memorial, saying the Crown Prince had acted out of great kindness and benevolence. More importantly, the snow disaster was getting worse, and many affairs still urgently needed his attention. Recently, the Emperor's health had also been poor, and he had been ill several times since the start of winter. At a time like this, the Crown Prince naturally had to shoulder the heavy responsibility. The Empress thought everything was secure, and apparently, many others thought the same, me. So I had to go find Yunjing and speak to him euphemistically about taking a concubine. "Your Highness," the Empress said, "the third miss of the Minister of Rights family has admired you for a long time." "What do you think?" Yunjing lifted his eyelids slightly. "What do you mean by that?" "Meow meow," I recalled, "though the third Miss Li is a concubine's daughter. I heard she has a gentle temperament and is an excellent chess player. If she enters the manor to accompany you, your days might become much more interesting." Yunjing asked in return, "So, you're not angry?" I looked surprised. "Why would I be angry?" Yunjing narrowed his phoenix eyes, and when he spoke again, His tone was inexplicably colder. If she comes, I may not be able to eat and sleep with Meow Meow every day from now on. That's right, how did I forget that? But, Your Highness is of noble status. I never should have thought of keeping you all to myself. If there is someone else to serve you with me, you will be happy, and that will make me happy too. I blinked, my eyes full of sincere affection, putting on the air of a considerate princess Yi. Unexpectedly, however, Yun Jing did not buy it this time. He tossed the book in his hand onto the table casually and said in a cold voice, "With my health, having just Meow Meow is tiring enough. If I take another concubine into the manor, I might not survive it." When I came to my senses, the maids and servants waiting in the courtyard were looking at me in a very strange way. A surge of anger shot straight to the top of my head. "Yun Jing, what nonsense are you talking about?" 11. My resentment was heavy, extremely heavy. I had been doing such a good job as Princess Yi, with the entire manor giving me perfect reviews, and now, it was all ruined with a single sentence from Yun Jing. What does he mean by having just me is tiring enough? What has he done? I wait on you every day, making your medicine, dressing you, warming your bed. And what about you? I stormed off and went to the princess's manor to admire the flowers. You really said that? Princess Qinyang clapped her hands in admiration. Impressive. Truly impressive. I was utterly annoyed. I never realized this man was so hard to please. Where else can you find a legitimate wife as dignified, generous and considerate as me? And he's not happy. Princess Qinyang clicked her tongue and drew an arrow from her quiver. Anyone who truly loves someone can never watch them be with others in peace. But you, not only do you not get jealous, you even take the initiative to match him up. What do you think the fourth prince is going to make of that? My heart skipped a beat. Oh no, does that mean Yun Jing has seen through all my acting from before? No wonder he looked so unhappy at the time. No one would be happy to find out they've been tricked, would they? I glanced to the side and muttered softly, "Xiao Qi watches you with all these young masters every day and never looks jealous. It seems he really doesn't like you." Twang! Princess Qinyang let loose an arrow full of resentment. And the delicate young man standing as a human target in front paled instantly. The arrow feather trembled an inch above his head. He looks a little familiar. Isn't he that top courtesan from the Autumn Breeze Pavilion last time, Ji Yang? But he doesn't look as good as in the portrait. What's wrong with people these days? Why is everyone faking their looks? Princess Qinyang was rare to see so annoyed. Who cares if he likes me or not? I spread my hands. Fine, you don't care. There are plenty of young masters and lords in the capital lining up to like you anyway. Princess Qinyang threw the bow and arrow aside and shot me a cold look over her shoulder. The flowers are admired enough. Go home, maybe the fourth prince is waiting for you at the manor right now. My heart sank. I slunk back to the prince's manor and started counting my assets. If Yun Jing was angry and didn't want me anymore, I'd have to take my savings and go back to my hometown. Fortunately, Yun Jing was wealthy, and in the few months since our marriage, he'd given me gifts from time to time, all of which would fetch a good price if sold. The sky had already turned dark, and Yulan chattered on beside me. "I heard after you left today, His Highness stayed in the study the whole time. He hasn't come out yet. And he hasn't eaten either." I took a big bite of the braised pork knuckle sent over by the small kitchen. Let him be, eat or starve, it's his choice. His Highness has always had a bad stomach. If he skips a meal now, his stomach will surely hurt terribly. I gulped down several big sips of cherry rice wine. The weather's been cold lately. If His Highness catches a cold alone, he'll probably be bedridden again. Fine, I'll go check on him. As soon as I reached the outside of the study, I heard a few suppressed coughs coming from inside. The anger I'd bottled up vanished in an instant, and a faint tinge of regret crept in. Forget it. This man probably doesn't have many days left. Why bother arguing with him? Not to mention, in the months since our marriage, Yun Jing has treated me impeccably. I was just about to raise my hand to knock when the door opened from the inside. The night was thick, with a light flurry of snow floating in the breeze. The glow of the colorful glazed lanterns fell on his cold jade-like face, gilding it with a warm hue, and in the depths of his dark eyes, there seemed to be an indescribable emotion. In that moment, I suddenly had an inexplicable feeling that he had been waiting for me for a long time. 12. We'd just fought during the day, so seeing each other now was rather awkward. I could only speak stiffly. Your Highness's body can't stand such trouble. It's late and you still haven't eaten, you'll only be the one suffering later, Yunjing said softly. I can't eat without Meow Meow here. Me, I hate this. Why am I always soft-hearted and not hard-headed? Why does him saying this in a faint voice with a pale face make me feel like I'm the one in the wrong? I took a deep breath and set down the heated meal. Eat a little. Warm your stomach. Yunjing seemed unusually obedient tonight. I told him to eat. And he actually sat down and finished every bite clean. Me, it would have been fine if this man had lost his temper at me, but this just makes me feel guilty. After eating, Yunjing turned to look at me. I thought Meow Meow didn't want me anymore. Me, who had been forced back by Princess Qinyang and already counted my savings. I took a deep breath, sorted out my thoughts, and said slowly, Your Highness is my husband. Husband and wife are one. How could I abandon you alone? Yunjing just stared at me quietly, as if it were a silent accusation. I immediately felt guilty. After all, I'd told him to take a concubine this morning. I didn't even bother to think how this ended up being my fault. I tapped the corner of the table, thought for a long time, and finally lowered my voice. I really didn't know this would make Your Highness angry. When my father married Madame Jiang back then, everyone was overjoyed. A flicker of emotion crossed Yunjing's eyes. I stared at the white porcelain cup, and scenes from a long time ago flashed through my mind one after another. I thought I'd forgotten them, but apparently, every detail was still clear. I remembered the courtyard strung with festive red silk, the sound of gongs and drums, the laughter and joy. I also remembered kneeling in the ancestral hall, with my mother's newly carved tombstone placed on the table. If Your Highness doesn't like it, I'll go talk to the Empress later, I said, but Yunjing said, No need. I looked up in surprise, and our eyes met just as he looked over. The corners of his thin lips curved slightly. As long as we have a child, no one else can say anything, right? I hesitated and asked, Your Highness means... I didn't finish my sentence before the man in front of me suddenly leaned in, and a cool kiss fell on my lips. I instinctively grabbed his lapels, only to touch the firm, warm muscles beneath his clothes. Our breaths mingled, and the faint cherry wine aroma that lingered on me suddenly grew intense, making my whole body hot and my head dizzy. I pushed him weakly. Why, Your Highness? Your body is still. You shouldn't force yourself. My voice broke between his lips and teeth. In a daze, I heard him let out a soft laugh. His voice hoarse and alluring. It's not forcing myself. For Meow Meow, it's worth it. Princess Qinyang ran over the next day, her eyes brimming with gossip. How was it? How was it later? I gave her a complicated look. Princess Qinyang's eyes lit up brightly. They say couples fight and make up in bed. Spare no details. Tell me everything. Me, you have so many pretty boys in your manor, you can ask a different one to tell you stories every day, and you won't repeat them for a month. Why do you have to ask me? Besides, it's fine not to talk about it, but the more I think about it, the worse I feel. After a long silence, I finally hesitated and spoke. I think His Highness is really dying. Princess Qinyang stared at me with a bunch of question marks on her face. I looked worried and whispered, I heard people have a burst of energy before they die, right? A last hurrah. 13. Princess Qinyang left with a look of utter exasperation. I've seen people show off, but never like this. Gu Meow Meow, you're going too far. Me, what did I do wrong this time? Didn't you ask me on your own initiative? Besides, my husband is like this, how can I not worry? But I never expected that the one who would collapse first, not Yunjing, was the crown prince. The emperor still ordered Jiang Ming's execution. After all, the matter had spread widely among the people, and not killing him would not calm the public anger. But unexpectedly, Jiang Ming bit the crown prince back at the last minute, saying that the third prince's assassination attempt on the crown prince had actually been plotted by the crown prince himself to frame the third prince, and that the third prince's suicide in prison had been orchestrated by the crown prince. This bombshell shook the entire court. Killing one's own brother for the throne was already the emperor's greatest taboo, let alone the crown prince going to such extreme lengths. Overnight, the crown prince was deposed, and the empress was implicated and thrown into the cold palace. The entire court was shrouded in an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. I even felt like crying for Jiyu Zhifang. I heard her wedding dress was already embroidered, but after all these twists and turns, she never got to marry into the crown prince's manor in the end. Who could have imagined this? But fortunately, her maternal uncle Jiang Ming was deeply entangled with the crown prince, so in a way, she and the crown prince were bound together for good. Sure enough, what's yours will always be yours, no matter how many detours you take. But I had no energy left to care about them, because I was pregnant. Great. Yulan was over the moon. From now on, even if something happens to His Highness the Fourth Prince, Miss won't have to worry anymore. I also breathed a sigh of relief and pushed Yunjing away with a solemn expression. Your Highness doesn't have to keep trying anymore. Focus on resting your body. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a hint of disappointment on Yunjing's face. Oh, this man is truly hopeless. Does he even know he doesn't have many days left? I felt even sadder. At this rate, the baby might not even get to see his father. When Princess Qinyang heard the news, she waved her hand and sent a mountain of gifts. I rubbed my eyes, which were almost blinded by the glitter, and looked at her with misty eyes. Your Highness is too kind. These gifts are far too valuable. Which one are you talking about? Princess Qinyang glanced around. My bad. How could I compare my little private savings to Princess Qinyang's wealth? Just as I was thinking, a servant boy came to report that my father was here. Princess Qinyang scoffed. With the crown prince deposed and the Jiang family confiscated, Prime Minister Ji Yu, who spoke up for the crown prince earlier, is naturally implicated too. He sent you to the bitter cold northern moors and ignored you for 10 years. And now he suddenly remembers he has a daughter. How convenient. I actually wanted to say I was really happy in my hometown. But what Princess Qinyang said was indeed true. In the half year since I married Yunjing, my father had never once asked about my life at the manor. Now he was here to visit, obviously because he had no other choice. After all, Yunjing was still the fourth prince, wasn't he? Probably seeing my dilemma. Princess Qinyang raised an eyebrow. Coincidentally, I have a manor on the outskirts of the capital with a hot spring built in it. It's very warm. Want to go there and play cards? I hesitated for a moment. Yunjing appeared out of nowhere, stroked my hair, and said gently, go if you want, meow meow. I'll handle father-in-law here. I immediately said, since your highness the princess has invited me sincerely, I can't refuse. Then I left with Princess Qinyang. As I walked out of the courtyard, I happened to see the steward walk up to Yunjing and whisper something to him. Prime Minister Ji Yu has been waiting in the front hall for a long time. Your Highness, what do you think? Yunjing turned his head and coughed violently, a long fit that only stopped after a while. He pulled his thick cloak tighter, and a hint of apology crossed his distant eyebrows. Meow Meow has gone out with Princess Qinyang, and I've just caught a cold. If I meet him, I might pass it on to father-in-law. Go tell him that when my health gets better in a few days, I will definitely bring Meow Meow to visit him in person. This is what you mean by handling it. 14. The man is just about to die, and you've only caught a cold. It's clear that Yunjing knows exactly how to prioritize things. Princess Qinyang glanced back and teased, "Oh, what's wrong?" Feeling sorry for your father and his whole family, I frowned. "He's still my biological father. No matter what. How could His Highness leave him waiting in the front hall for half an hour like that?" I pulled open the small drawer in the carriage and grabbed another handful of preserved plums. "He should at least send a cup of tea over." Princess Qinyang, I have to say, Princess Qinyang's family is really well off. Her carriage is extraordinarily comfortable. I leaned against a soft cushion